Howdy, and welcome to Here's the Story, a show where we bring student affairs to life by sharing the authentic voices and lived experience of those who are shaping the field every day. As a part of the Student Affairs Now family, we are dedicated to serving and furthering the people who walk the walk, talk the talk, and carry the rock. All of us who find ourselves serving students in their education and student affairs in higher education. You can find us at studentaffairsnow.com or directly at www.studentaffairsnow.com/here's the story, or on YouTube or anywhere you find a podcast. Today, we're going to start off by paying the bills and thanking our sponsor, Huron. Huron's education and research experts help institutions transform their strategy, operations, technology, and culture to foster innovation, financial health, and student success. I'm your host. I'm Neil Galimo. I use the he, him series of pronouns, and I am blessed to serve as the Director of Campus Living and Learning at Texas A&M's Galveston campus. And I'm coming to you today from sunny Pelican Island, just off of Galveston Island. And I'm here with my co-host.
I'm JT Snipes. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I serve as Associate Professor and Chair of the Educational Leadership Department at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. And I'm just trying my best to live as a free Black man in a world that have me live otherwise. I'm coming to you today from the ancestral lands of the Kickapoo and the Illinois Confederacy. The university resides on ceded land from the treaty in 1819 of Edwardsville, which is now home to SIUE. And that's me.
Yeah, and so we are here today with a fantastic guest. I'll be I'd love to introduce Dr. Michael Preston. I found out about Michael Preston through a friend, Shelby Hearn, who, when I asked her, like, hey, do you know anybody who has any good stories? Immediately, Michael's name came out, like just no second thought, and you got to call him. And so she introduced us. That sounds worse when I say it out loud, but I regret nothing.
I wasn't going to say anything. You said it. Let's fix the I introduce. We could just say introduce.
And I say this with completely genuine, like I like people, but I feel like I had a connection with Michael right off the bat. When we talked and worked on the story, and I'm just really, really excited to introduce him and have him here with us. So
yes, me too. I'm very excited to hear.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then let's hop into it.
Sure thing. Thank you so much. Hi, my name is Michael Preston. I serve right now as the Associate Vice President for Student Success here at Texas State University in San Marcos, Texas. I moved here about 13 months ago after spending 13 years at the University of Central Florida, where I was both the director of the Office of Student Involvement, but also the inaugural executive director of the Florida Consortium of Metropolitan Research Universities. And they got me into the student success world where I reside today. I've been a student affairs professional for now just about 30 years. It's been a long time. I started at Stephen F. Austin State University in East Texas and was there for a number of years. So enough about my professional experience. I've been married for 28 years to my college sweetheart, Nicole, who we're actually going tonight to go enjoy a concert with Howard Jones and ABC. So us 80s kids are going to enjoy that. And we have our daughter, Caroline, who just recently graduated from Mississippi State University, and she's trying to figure out whether she wants to go to medical school or law school. So we're really proud that there are only good choices ahead for her right now. So that's a little bit about me. On my spare time, I'm a Miami Dolphins fan. I grew up in South Florida. I love music. I love writing about pop music and pop culture. And I love a good bar trivia night. So getting to the age where the young kids are starting to beat the snot out of us at bar trivia. But you know what? There's still some good beer and a little bit of chicken wings involved. So that's always a good thing.
No lose. No lose. So let's hear about your story.
You know, it's Valentine's Day. and we're recording this on Valentine's Day at least. And so I wanted to start talking about a love story. And no, not my love affair with student affairs. That certainly is there, but certainly with someone who helped craft my career and ultimately has taught me more about not only student affairs, but how to be a better person and a better man than just about anybody that I'm directly related to. And that's my friend, Dr. Adam Peck. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about how we met and ultimately just kind of what life is like without him just a couple of years ago when we lost him. But, you know, starting with any love story, there's always that first meeting, right? We could probably go back to if we have a spouse or a partner, remember the first time that we saw each other or that we met. And for us, we met at the National Association for Campus Activities in the late 90s. We were both brand new professionals in the field. And we both had volunteered to be at the front checking IDs before people went into the exhibit hall. And they paired us up. And immediately we started talking to each other, and we found that there was just this connection. And here was the connection. We both love to find ways that we can make each other laugh with inappropriate jokes.
That was your meet cute.
That was, yeah, that was like and it became our love language throughout our entire relationship. But we started off by having this conversation. What is the most stunning or shocking kind of exhibit that you could find in the exhibit hall that would get us fired? You know, and we're trying to one up each other. It got inappropriate, so I won't go into any of those, certainly. But we knew that we had this connection. We started talking about things that we loved, like stand-up comedy, Saturday Night Live. We both liked a lot of the same music. We both, weirdly, I grew up in Miami, but I was a big St. Louis Cardinals baseball fan, and he was too. And so we started talking about that. And we just kind of went into like all these things. I know, go Cards, you know, right? Redbirds.
Well, you know, I'm in St. Louis right now, so I feel like I have to put on for the city.
Absolutely. You know what? And you know, just completely aside, the reason I fell in love with the Cardinals was because they won the World Series the first year I played Little League ball. And growing up in Miami, we didn't have a baseball team at the time. So anyway, that's a whole thing. So our friendship grew over time, much like any other friendship does. We connected with similar life experiences. We, you know, talked about our families. But also we found that our friendship had this great creative synergy that we knew very early on. We both had a similar outlook for how we felt student leadership and student engagement really drove overall student success. We had an affinity for the same theorists and writers. We were both big Tinto fans and talking about student departure and why students can't complete in college. We understood each other from a system standpoint. He was a really, really good writer and a design thinker. I was more creative in my approach and was able to talk in metaphor and develop narrative. And so between the two of those items, we really started to grow in our relationship. And that, of course, is with the other type of friendly ways that we got together. And we did that for years, even though we were kind of far apart. I was at Stephen F. Austin State University. He was first at St. Edward's, I think, and then he was he's at Lutheran University, and then he was at University of Texas, and then at St. Louis University. And through those times, we just kind of kept in contact, and we'd see each other at conferences. Then things really took off. So after we've been kind of hanging out for many, many years, he had an opportunity to come to Stephen F. Austin and become the dean of students there. And I really encouraged him to do that. I thought he'd be great at it. I kind of also wanted to pick my own boss, if that makes sense, and was able to kind of bring him on board. So I knew that we'd be a great duo, and that did not disappoint. Throughout that relationship with Adam, we really grew this great professional relationship. And I'll tell you what made it even better is that we were able to separate out what our professional relationship needed to be with our personal relationship. After work, if we would go out and go grab some of those chicken wings I was talking about earlier and just kind of shoot the breeze and talk about baseball or music, we could do that. And then there's been a couple of times when he had to discipline me for reasons that, I had made a mistake or I did not live up to the standards that we had set at the university. And he was able to do so with both a kindness and a humanity that I really admired, while also making sure that everyone knew that I was not above the expectations of the rest of the university and the people that reported to him. Through that time, we really started talking about something that which became our passion. And that was this idea of engagement, creating a pathway to employability for our students. And I really think that came from looking at our students at Stephen F. Austin and understanding that for many of them, they were the first in their families to go to college. They usually came from low-income families. And if they were going to really land that job and compete with students who are graduating from schools with name brands within the state of Texas, they had to have a narrative and a story to highlight the different skills that they were learning. And so that led to, Adam putting together the book Engagement and Employability, in which I wrote a chapter for. We also edited our co-curricular connections model, or C3 model, which became the subject for over a dozen publications that we wrote together. It was something that even to this day still has legs.
Yeah.
In a few weeks, I take off for the country of Singapore because they've adopted the model at their higher ed institutions there in Singapore. And so they're going to have their first students graduate from their programs that are using the co-curricular connections model. And I get to go and deliver, a speech, a keynote address about this model and why it's so important. So we are living out all of that for them. And I would say that that's when, we were really just kind of in this beautiful friendship where everywhere you'd go, you'd find the two of us. Once I left and I went to the University of Central Florida, we maintained that relationship. Every conference we roomed together. Every time that you would see us presenting, the other one was either in the audience or on stage with them, with each other, presenting. We would call each other with ideas in the middle of the night. It got so bad that his wife would often say, "Hey, Adam, your husband's on the line." That was her joke. Take it for what it's worth, right? But we became this inseparable, so much so that also, if we were walking around the conference and we didn't happen to be next to each other, someone would come up and go, "Hey, where's Adam?" Like as if he was supposed to always be by my side, right?
Down well, yeah.
So, but we kept doing all this work, and in time, we certainly were, ready to also expand. And this is where I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about when we shut down for COVID. We shut down for COVID. We knew that this was going to be a hard time in our field, but also a hard time for each other. And that's when we started up a group chat with another fellow counterpart, Justin Lawhead, who's at the University of Memphis. And the three of us, we started a text message group in which we were just kind of trying to lift each other up throughout the hard work of the pandemic and what it was going. We also called it mutual assured destruction because we were unfiltered in how we talked to each other. If someone got that text message, they would probably, I'd just go ahead and put in my letter of resignation right away. And, I felt like we were at this point. In the fall of 2021, we all gathered in Memphis because Justin got married. And I just remember the three of us were standing there getting pictures taken. And I thought, this is the person that I'm supposed to be with forever. Like, I have my wife, but I think you have your wife and then you have your person, or your husband and your person, or your spouse and your person. And while certainly your spouse can be your person, there's also that other person that you need in your life that you can go to because you can't always, because there are so many emotions involved with a love relationship, that you can't always be as super authentic as you can with this one person. And I think we could probably all think about who that is. Like, even if it's inappropriate or something, like you just got to tell a dirty joke. He's your guy or she's your person. He was that person. And in 2021, I'd never felt closer to him. We were making all these incredible plans. And then about a year later, that's when it ended. And that's kind of really the story here, is the love story that we've had since September of 2022. I was sitting at, we had actually shut down at UCF for an impending hurricane. Hurricane Ian was coming. And I was sitting there and I was having a cold beer with a colleague of mine as we were kind of figuring out, all right, we got to do all these things before we shut down and get done. And I got a phone call that stopped me dead in my tracks. Neil was actually Shelby who texted me and said, have you heard something happened to Adam? And so I immediately called Adam. I had talked to him just about 2 hours earlier when we shut down. And I called him and I said, hey, man, we're shutting down. You want to give me a call later? He said, yeah, man. Well, let's talk about something. As that kind of happened and the hurricane started coming on board, it became more and more obvious that he wasn't going to make it. What had happened, he was at Illinois State University as the associate VP there, and he was walking across campus. He got sideswiped by somebody riding a motorized bicycle. And when he did, it surprised him and he fell. When he fell, he hit his head. And basically, he wasn't gonna make it. So they kept him alive for quite a few days. I kept in contact with his wife. Michelle and I have been good friends for a long time and continue to this day. And they kept him alive just long enough so that he can donate all of his organs. So there's about 7 people out there who are still alive because of him. But that was a really tough time, and it was a really unusual time because we were also in the middle of a hurricane. I think there's some symbolism there that I can't wrap my brains around, and I'll try one day. But I can tell you, grief, whenever it hits, is something that you're not really ready for. And for everybody, it's going to hit differently. But when it's your person, when it's your best friend, it's a little different because while we all expect our parents to go one day, and my dad has passed away, you don't always expect your best friend to go this soon. And I can say that I went through the 5 stages of guilt and the 5 stages of mourning. I can start by saying that early on, I was in complete denial. Justin and I joke about this to this day. We were still texting in the group chat, even after we knew that he had passed away. And we would say jokes like, you can come out now. This isn't funny, dude. Every Friday, it was our tradition to post our first Friday beverage, whether it's, a Diet Coke or a cold beer, to kind of as a cheers to the weekend. And we kept doing that for months afterwards because we couldn't believe that he was no longer around. To this day, we even sometimes talk about him as if he's still with us and still here. And I know his presence is, but physically, we know he's very much not.
Yeah.
Then I went into anger. I remember there was a video that his wife, Michelle, sent me of his final walk down as they were getting ready to go, and he was getting ready to donate his organs. And there's a whole ceremony that they do on the pathway there. And I remember how mad I was at him. Here it is. This is his moment, right? Like, this is a moment that he had thought about even, and this was just quintessential him. Even in death, he was going to give to people that needed him. And this final path, I just wanted to punch him in the face. I was just like, how dumb are you for not seeing that bicycle? Couldn't you just catch yourself? Couldn't you have left work 3 minutes earlier? No, you had to stay and probably answer that last email, and that's why you're dead. And I went through that. It was very selfish of me. I just remember that being like a thing.
It's human, man.
Yeah, it was a very human moment. I even text messaged Michelle a few times. I was like, what a jerk. He's going to leave you alone, leave the kids alone, and leave me alone, and blah, blah, blah. It's just a whole thing. Then I went through the bargaining stage, and I remember specifically what that was. I returned from his funeral a couple months later, And at his funeral, after his funeral, I said, you know what? I'm just going to have to work harder than I ever had. I can bring him back through work.
Oh,
It'd be like he never left, right? So I worked really hard, and I was doing very good work at that time. It was very high level. Landed a couple big grants. I was really excited about it. That was when my supervisor at the time, Dr. Adrienne Frame, who's the vice president at UCF, she called me in her office. She said, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you, you're going to take a few days off, and then you're also going to go get grief counseling. And if you don't, then we're going to talk about this.
slow. That's boss.
Yeah, she drew a hard line. I said, but I'm doing some of the best work in my career. She goes, that's the thing I'm worried about.
Mm.
The thing I'm worried about is that this thing is going to come crashing down around you if you don't talk to someone about it. And you haven't talked to anyone about it. And so I did. That was the first time I ever cried about it with my grief counselor. It really got me thinking about the idea of kind of vicarious trauma, and how as student affairs professionals, many times we're asked to keep carrying on, even though we see some pretty gnarly things. I think about my housing and residence life uh, friends who walk in on a sexual assault, or somebody that's overdosed, or whatever that trauma might be, and how if they were a first responder, they'd be forced to go to some sort of a counseling or therapy session, but they don't, because they're just expected to carry on. As a matter of fact, I had a student that I worked on her dissertation with her. She did some great work. Her name is Linnell Hodge. She's with Housing and Residence Life at UCF. She did her dissertation on vicarious trauma and how often that can lead to departure of people within our field. And I could see where that could have been me if I had not had someone intervene with me and tell me that I needed to get some help, not just personally, but professionally, because it was affecting my work right now for the positive, but eventually it would be for the negative. And that was the first time I actually admitted that I was depressed and that I wasn't doing well. And, when I really started crying about the fact that he was gone, I realized that I wasn't myself and that I could never recreate the synergy that we had just by myself. So I had to be ready for that. And it was during that time, and it took about 2 or 3 months for me to really sink into that I understood that acceptance is that, look, he's gone, and I had to learn to be a different, authentic self without him. And that's okay. I will tell you this. There's a couple of things that I believe are legacy building as a result of his passing. And I'll kind of like finish up, and we can maybe have some questions here. The first is I'm here at Texas State because this was our dream. It's part of what we inspired to do. And I've talked to my boss, Dr. Cynthia Hernandez here, who's the vice president, that after I got the job, that one of our conspiracies that we had come up with is that we wanted to work again together with each other. He loved Central Texas. I like Central Texas a lot. And he said, when the time is right, that vice president job is going to open up and I'll be the VP at Texas State. And when I am, I'm going to bring you in as my right-hand person. And so now I am Dr. Hernandez's right-hand person in the VP's office. And I remember seeing this job open up and I went, it's almost as if it was built so that I would get there and I could remind myself that there was a plan all along and I need to stick to the plan. And now I am very lucky in that my vice president, Dr. Hernandez, has a lot of the same qualities that Dr. Peck does. She's very hard on me and she really makes sure that I'm doing great work, but she also has this real knack for understanding pop culture and a good joke. And so we get along fantastically. And I've since shared that with her and how much I admire that work here now that I'm here. And I get a chance to drive by some of the places that he loved, the Rudy's and New Braunfels, and, to get some barbecue, for example. The other thing that we were able to do that I'm really, really proud of is posthumously, we were able to get him named a pillar of the profession with NASPA. That happened last year. Nearly $4,000 were donated to the NASPA Foundation in his name posthumously. And to see Michelle up on stage accepting that award, something that he really cared about a lot, really made me feel as if we had real closure there. And I was able to close the book on that part of our relationship, even though many others carry on. And that's exactly it. We're now carrying on the work. I'm remembering without dwelling on it. I am remembering with celebration. And honestly, I'm really excited that in a couple of weeks I get to go back to Singapore and see the completion of some of this work and to present. And I know he'll be right there behind me, kind of making sure that I don't screw this thing up. And that's exactly it. There's there's an old parable about a waiting room, and that when everyone dies, that they go into this waiting room, and there are three deaths. The first death is the actual physical death. It's the death that you suffer from whenever our bodies die. The second death is whenever you transition to this room and you realize that you have passed. And the third death is when the last person who remembers you utters your name. And you then pass off into the ether and get to join whatever the great beyond is. And I did think about this not too long ago. His life was so important to so many different people, and why I wanted to talk about it on this podcast, because it's going to be probably a couple hundred years before the last person utters his name, either it be through his writings or through people that remember him so fondly. So I hope he's good in that waiting room, because he's going to be sitting there for a while before his name's called, because the last person uttered his name. So, and that's a love story. I love the guy. He's my brother. He's my best friend. And he's was the person I wanted to grow old with, maybe in the old folks home together. But I'll go on and make sure that I live out all the things that he definitely wanted to see about our relationship over time.
And instead of growing old with him, you get to grow old for him. So
Yeah, that's it. And believe me, at 52, I'm starting to feel every bit growing old for him. I did joke with Michelle not too long ago. I said, you know what? He hacked the system. He never had to see 50 and like hurt himself while he's asleep, which is what happens to me.
So I'm curious. I feel like as someone who has experienced loss, I lost my dad now almost 10 years ago, and there's a grief that just lingers.
Mhm.
So I'm curious about your attenuation to grief, right? And how you recognize it in the people that you're working with. One of the most powerful parts of your story was hearing you name that someone saw you grieving when you couldn't see it for yourself.
Yeah.
I'm curious if that has created a different sensibility toward grief in you and in your leadership.
Yeah, I think it has. Shortly after I went through a lot of these different emotions, a colleague of mine at the Florida Consortium, his dad started the pathway towards passing. And one of the things that I remember I probably regret from this process is not going to Illinois to be there towards the end. And I know I would have been welcome. Michelle would have, I was part of the family, but I didn't know that that was something that I could do. And so I kept reminding this colleague to go and to take the time. Don't worry about the work. The work will be here. We'll fill in the gaps. And I think too often we just let people kind of sink into their work because we think that might be the best therapy for them.
Yeah.
When in fact, what they need to do is they need to take the time to be present. And so as I know and I hear of people within our circles who's going through the same thing, I believe that I become a bit of a guide, while also understanding that everyone's pathway through grief is different. JT, my dad passed away now going on 20 years ago. But he was a little different in that he suffered from severe alcoholism and drug abuse and was in a lot of pain. And so there was actually a celebration, or I felt good when he passed away because I knew he was released from a lot of things that were really haunting him. So, that was a different pathway through grief, whereas this one felt a lot more sudden and more unfair. And so, I think just kind of being and giving people space is one of the ways that we can really help along that journey. And if they want to talk, that's fine, but don't make that part of it. You don't need to interject yourself into their grief.
My dad, and next month, my dad will have been gone 11 years. And you guys, I still have his number in my phone.
Mm-hmm.
I need it. And when I talk about it, I definitely feel when you say like you get angry, like when the girls are doing something, when Hattie does something wild, or which is often, or in we never got to meet Hazel, and there's just times where I get so mad at him for not taking care of himself, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like I think that really says a lot that if you feel the absence, it's because they had such a big place, they left a big hole. It's because they were so big, and it's really about what you use to fill it back in, right?
Yeah. Well, that makes me think about WandaVision, when the line about grief, I'm gonna butcher it, but it just speaks to this sort of eternal love, that what is grief but not love continuing, right? Love fighting beyond the grave. And I think about your story in this way too for me. So, Michael, I'd love to hear you talk about uh, when I hear you talk about love in this doesn't feel like just a platonic love. This feels like something deeper. And I heard you talking about this in your story, right? And as a cishet man, like we often don't talk about sort of
Yeah.
the romantic visions of love, is what I hear in your story, right? Like there's
Mm-hmm.
a visioning of a life together that isn't just like, oh, we're bros, like we are partners in this journey. And one, I'm appreciative of you for framing the story in that way, because this could have been like a buddy comedy story, right? That deals with grief and tragedy. But I really appreciate you naming that this is something more than platonic. And I don't know if I have a good question, but I am curious about how you, in preparing this story, thought about your relationship in those ways.
Yeah, I grew up as an Air Force kid, and so I would move every 3 or 4 years, and I don't have a whole lot of like lifelong friends.
Mm.
And so I know one of the things that I craved personally was connection. I'm good alone, but he made me understand that the bond that you have with those people who are close like that in your life moves beyond friendship, moves beyond we're just, dudes hanging out. Um, to where I had an affection for him that was very much a relationship. We would sometimes argue as if we were in a relationship because we didn't always agree, as nobody does. Um, I always felt very good when I could embrace him, and he wasn't much of a hugger. He wasn't very, and I'm not a super affectionate person, but he was one of the few people that I enjoyed hugging.
Mm.
And I think often we discount that as men. A lot of times we think of like kind of physical affection as somehow being not masculine. Uh, or we do that bro hug, the two taps on the back and then that's it. Now,
Yeah.
we understood that there was really an affection there that while it wasn't a traditional love relationship like we had with our spouses, it was definitely something that we conspired to be closer to each other. And I think that that's a different place to be than I have often with some of my other friendships, be them male or female. We would find reasons to be close to each other, and that was something that I still think of because I know that that's missing. I don't have that same companionship in the same way, even though I've grown closer with some of my other male friends. I've got one in particular who works at Virginia Commonwealth, David, who's a little bit younger than me, but we've since really grown in our friendship because he was really there when Adam passed away. And he's sort of growing into that next person that I can feel that kind of real love and companionship with in a way that's just different from being just a guy that you hang out with. He's literally the guy, Adam's literally the guy that I could have been like, I can't let you ask any questions, but I need you to meet me here with a shovel. You know, and he'd be like, I'll be right there, man. You know, and
Get my boots.
right, and we'll never speak.
I just think it's really cool how you know, like there's no walls. You know, we all have friends, and I have best friends. And yeah, I think if we're being honest, like there's always like that wall of like what is acceptable or what could be too far. And I think it's really cool that like you were like, what wall? It's all made up. There is no spoon. And
Yeah.
and yeah, there's a part of our audience that will not get that reference. And I'm okay with it. Go look it up. So Michael, I'm almost mad at you because I knew this would be good, but I didn't expect this. But man, I don't know how we go on to thanking our sponsors after this, but that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna pay some bills. I want to say special thanks to the Huron. Huron collaborates with colleges and universities to create sound strategies, optimize operations, and accelerate digital transformation. By embracing diverse perspectives, encouraging new ideas, and challenging the status quo, Huron promotes institutional resilience in higher education. For more information, please go to go.hcg.com/now. Ah, man. This has been Here's the Story. Here's the story. I'm part of the Student Affairs Now family. We're so glad that you joined us to laugh, cry. Yeah, we cried and learn, and sometimes commiserate, but always celebrate being part of the Student Affairs experience. If you have a story, and we all have a story, please consider sharing it with us by leaving a pitch via voice file at studentaffairsnow.com/here's the story. Every single story is welcome, and every earnest perspective is worthy. And even if you don't feel like sharing yours, you can still find ours and others at studentaffairsnow.com or on YouTube. Please smash that subscribe button and anywhere you listen to the podcast. Also, special shout out to Nat Ambrosi, who has been our editor. Nat, you make us sound better than we have any reason sounding. So thank you.
And thanks to Michael for
thanks to Michael
being our guest.
Thank you. That was great.
Yeah. Until next time, I'm Neil E. Galimo.
And I'm JT Snipes.
We hope this fed your flame a little bit because your light matters. Keep using it to make the world a brighter place. Until next time, this has been Here's the Story.